And welcome to this week's edition of DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Meharry, joined by my co-hosts Jake Roos and Dave McMahon of UGASports.com. And guys, we've got another great show lined up for you this week. We're going to talk about the opening regionals in Atlanta just came by, and Jake Roos was there to cover it all, talk to some of the top recruits in the state of Georgia and around the following states. Jake, you got a little sunburnt, but you got to see some great talent out there.
Yeah, I did, and I really want to give a shout-out to our friends over at 11 Alive, WXIA TV, for allowing us to cover that on their behalf. We got a ton of stories up over there, so make sure you go check that out at 11 Alive. Yeah, some big news for the Dogs, guys rising, guys falling, some guys we've never heard from before that we got to touch base with as well. So it was a really interesting day overall.
That's always the fun part about these camps, especially when you get into that March and April type camp scene where you see guys start shooting up. You see the Jeremiah Hollimans of the world start making their name and their presence felt alongside these camps, and they make their way to Kirby Smart's football camp, blow up, and that's how they get an offer, So it is a continuing cycle for that. We've also got a ton of practice stuff, and Dave, you were mentioning some stats. What you got for us?
Well, I mean, obviously I'll break down even more so, but obviously the last 50 or so years, Georgia hasn't had too much turnover in the head coaching wise. I mean, it went from Dooley from 64 to 88. It went from Ray Goff had a good 7-year stretch, and then Jim Don, and then Mark Richt was obviously there for the last previous 15 years before Kirby took over. And for the most part, year one to year two is a decent amount of difference in terms of yards and points and records-wise, in terms of offensive production. And I think a lot of Georgia fans did complain a lot about how our offense was sputtering last year. So next year, let's see how it improves.
Yeah, let's see how it improves. And we're going to improve when we come back from this commercial break. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGASports.com.
All right. And, folks, make sure if you got any questions that you're sending them in our way. Recruiting, team, otherwise, we've been covering practice. Like we said, the opening, so there's plenty to talk about in terms of all that stuff, and I'll be glad to share anything I can, as will Dave and Paul. You want to open with the
Start practice this week.
Yeah, let's start practice.
Okay.
Talking about practice?
Yeah.
Practice?
Yeah, we're take that, Allen Iverson. We're talking about practice.
All right, guys. 3, 2. And welcome back to this week's edition of DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Meharry, joined by my co-hosts Jake Roos and Dave McMahon of UGASports.com. And, guys, we're going to open the show up with a little bit of practice talk. Yes, spring practice is back in Athens. We talked about it last week. Jake was able to cover it the first day and really give us an in-depth point of view. And also, Jake was there again for a extended viewing pleasure that Georgia football allowed you guys to participate in. We're not able to bring cameras. We're not able to bring flash photography, video cameras.
Only our big brains.
But the brains, were you allowed to have a pen and paper?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you were.
So
you were able to write down what you saw. And like you said, hey, first off, definitely don't want that to sound totally sarcastic. Really did appreciate Georgia giving us that time. Would have loved to have snapped some shots and shot some video out there too. But overall, I think that it was a good day. It was kind of a revealing day. It was a good opportunity to really see how some of these units are starting to flesh out, and early on in the spring, and that kind of thing's going to change. I mean, there's no doubt about that, but it's interesting to see what they're going with kind of right off the gate. The main thing that's stood out to me, and I know that people will be wondering about, is the sort of the offensive line rotations early on. Currently, you've got Isaiah Wynn playing left tackle. Not a huge surprise. Kirby told us kind of from the opening that would be what they had planned. It's going to be interesting to see if that's his final spot. Correct. He believes that's the case.
He does.
He said, he's like, the past couple years he's bounced around a little bit. He's played some guard. He's had to step out and play some tackle. Will he be able to focus this year on one position? I really like his chances to be able to do it this year. And,
really?
And I do, because I just don't think that there's anybody else on that line necessarily who's going to be pushing him at this moment. I don't see it. And I'll say this. Part of that comes from the fact that Alden Bynum's playing right tackle right now. I don't think he's going to push him. And behind Alden at right tackle is DeMarcus Hayes. the JUCO transfer that I know a lot of people are hoping delivers and maybe becomes the left tackle. But I'm not sure that's going to happen.
How long, I know this is kind of a little sidetrack here, but we'll keep it going. How long before fans get worried DeMarcus Hayes doesn't make it over Alden Bynum?
I would say
at the end of spring practice, do fans continue to scratch their heads, or do they?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I wouldn't. Okay. The thing about it is Alden has definitely earned his chance to get those reps there. He's stood by this team. He's been very loyal. He's put on some good weight, so he's looking, probably in the best shape that I've ever seen him in. Looking a lot hardier, really is the thing about it. And it's the same is true of Isaiah Wynn. I mean, these guys talked about that they put on anywhere between 15 and 25 pounds, in this offseason, even since the end of that TCU game. So those are huge gains for these guys to make right out of the gate. And for them to come in that shape, Hayes, don't get me wrong, he was, a strong guy at Mississippi Gulf Coast, but, playing in the SEC and being in the shape that requires, that takes some time, and coming up to that level of competition. I've spoken highly of his JUCO experience because, like I said, Mississippi Gulf Coast, a fantastic junior college, plays some fantastic junior colleges as well. So he's had a chance to cut his teeth against some really good players in this collegiate level. But this is a whole different caliber. This is even further than that. So it's going to take time for him to adjust. I'm not surprised that he hasn't jumped out in front of it and got that down. But like I said, I think it's going to be Isaiah Wynn's left tackle to lose.
I don't think.
Do you feel that way, Dave?
Yeah. I'm not panicking at all. I won't start panicking that Hayes is not. Not even all spring, I'll be okay with it.
Really?
Yeah, I'll be, and then let's see him do the full summer workouts. Let's see how he comes ready to compete later in the fall. Maybe the first couple of days I'll be okay, but by the second week, that's when I said, okay, now you know what the coaches want, you know what they expect. You're ready into the system, into their weight program. Now it's time to make sure that, hey, Georgia invested in you. Let's help out. So I would not be worried for an offensive lineman to prepare. Just like with players like Pat Allen, or Ben Cleveland, people that are freshmen. I don't expect freshmen to. People think just because you're a 5-star. I know that doesn't suit well for people that are Isaiah Wilson fans and stuff like that. But why is it that freshmen are supposed to produce right away? For the longest time, freshmen weren't even allowed to play, and now we're expecting just because you're a 5-star that you're supposed to play from day one. Getting 3 years out of a guy, I'm okay with. Even 2 years out of a guy, I don't like it, but if it happens.
What about the Isaiah Wynn at left tackle? Jake seems to think that he's okay with him staying right there.
I'm not thrilled because I think nowadays he still needs to gain a little bit more weight. He should go with the diet that I went around my freshman year and some of these sorority girls did with gaining the 15 pounds and stuff like that. No offense to these sorority girls,
but we got a ton watching now. By the way,
they're our biggest viewers right now. Is that demographic
declining immediately?
Oh no, what's it all going? No, but basically, I don't want Wynn to be our left tackle. If he's the best person in position, definitely go out there. But I don't. I wish, sort of like how when we talked about a couple months ago with our cornerbacks, it was, Jameis Williams was a small corner, but he had the speed, and there's people like Breeny that had the height and stuff like that, but maybe not as fast. Too bad we couldn't combine those two. Too bad we can't combine Isaiah Wynn with some of the guys that are about 320 pounds and stuff like that.
Sure.
But that won't happen.
But now I will say Isaiah told us he during post-practice interviews he's playing at the heaviest he's ever been in his career. He's 305 right now. Was playing around the 285 mark. Said he can feel a difference in his game, not getting pushed around as much. So I think that's going to be. People forget. This guy played left tackle, stepped in at Auburn against Auburn last year, and took some steps against Carl Lawson and gave him some trouble. It was he's had some reps against some quality opponents. I think he's really good there. I think he's Georgia's best O-lineman, really, period, regardless of position, just in terms of technique and what he's able to bring to the field. So, hey, more often than not, that guy does play left tackle.
If he's the best person, I'm saying definitely play him, but I'm not. Even at 305, I kind of I'm kind of hesitant right now.
Well, you're hesitant. Let's take a quick break so you can get your thoughts back underneath you, and we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more offensive line. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGASports.com.
All right, a whole
Guys,
Isaiah Wynn segment.
Yeah, I'm not done talking to O-line because our Anthony Dasher, he saw a pretty crazy lineup out there today, one that I would not put together.
They're I got to tell you, this is like one of those combination locks where like you're trying to break into somebody's locker and you don't know exactly what you're doing, so you just keep turning and pulling and hoping something hits. I think that they're going to try a lot of these formations out, but let's hop back into that O-line discussion.
3-2. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Meharry, joined by Jake Roos and Dave McMahon, my trusty co-host. And, guys, we were talking about Isaiah Wynn for the first segment. That's where that went. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the offensive line. And here's an offensive line update for you.
Tell us.
Isaiah Wynn at left tackle, Pat Allen at left guard, Lamont Galliard at center, Solomon Kinley at right guard, and Dyshawn Sims at right tackle. That's what our man Anthony Dasher saw at practice today. It's a little weird. If you don't follow it too closely, these names don't sound that familiar to you. Pat Allen, for all intents and purposes, came into Georgia potentially as their left tackle of the future.
Yeah.
When they recruited him out of Maryland. He's playing left guard. Solomon Kinley was a guy that Georgia recruited. Sam Pittman recruited 2 days after he got onto campus. He was committed within a week, it seems like. He's at right guard. Dyshawn Sims, who I think is, like we talked about last show, is kind of your utility man. He's that sixth man off the bench, and he's at right tackle. It's interesting, very interesting. My thing, and I didn't get to put in too much about Isaiah Wynn, but I would really like if the Dogs did not have to play him at left tackle. That would mean to me you have Isaiah Wynn, you have Galliard, and you have Dyshawn Sims in the middle, and then you can kind of work with Wilson and Hayes on the outside.
Yeah, but, for me, the thing about it is we had a chance to see Wynn play that guard spot last year, and I know that that's what people believe he's probably destined to play in the league.
For sure.
But,
that's what he's going to play.
Well, maybe. I
don't think he's tackling the NFL.
No, definitely not.
No.
But he could be a center.
Sure.
I think that he's got the capability to do that. I think what people forget though is like last year, I mean he played left guard and it wasn't exactly like beautiful. And now I'm not saying he wasn't getting a ton of help from Tyler Catalina.
Correct.
So a lot of the onus
on the inside.
Sure.
Really.
A lot of the onus was on him, but like I said, he's got the feet for it. He's got the flex. He's got everything you want. I mean, he's got great technique. And really, to me, when he's a guy, and this is something I always look for in tackles, as opposed to the guards, I think when I think of guards, I think of guys holding the line. When I think of the tackles, I think of the guys locking out and
sure.
even moving them out of the way. I think he's so good at that, and his arms are so long that I think that he's very capable of doing it and doing a fantastic job.
Here's what scares me the most with Wynn playing a different position, and not just Wynn. I mean, I wish I had the snap count, the thing on UGASports.com, and all the snap counts from last year. But Wynn at left tackle, Allen at left guard, Galliard at center, Kinley at right guard, Sims at right tackle. How many snaps have those guys played in that position in career-wise on the college level? I mean, it has to be under
0 for Pat Allen, 1 for Solomon Kinley. I don't think Sims has ever played right tackle. Galliard's never played center. Wynn's played a little bit of left guard.
Yeah, so maybe under 50 combined.
Yeah,
sure,
easily.
So that's what scares me. But guess what? In the fall, I mean, you might have a little bit here and a little bit there. That's not what you're going to see.
Jake made a really good point while we were off air. He said it's kind of like a combination lock. And Kirby Smart's just trying to twist it around, and he's putting each piece in to try to unlock this. And obviously, I don't think that's what we're going to be seeing.
No, we're not going to see that. But I mean,
but all of those names there, I think all 5 of those guys are going to play important roles for them moving forward.
And I like
you
the
add
fact
Ben Cleveland to that. You add Isaiah Wilson to that. You add DeMarcus Hayes to that. You got a solid 8 that you can roll with.
And that, to me, Dash posted this as saying it was an interesting lineup.
Correct.
To see. What we've been seeing over the course of the first few practices, it's been Isaiah Wynn at left tackle, Dyshawn Sims at left guard, Lamont Galliard at center, Solomon Kinley at right guard, Alden Bynum at right tackle. Your second team kind of stacks up like this: left tackle Kendall Baker, left guard Pat Allen, center Sean Fogarty, right guard Ben Cleveland, and then right tackle DeMarcus Hayes. So this sounds like kind of a meshing almost of those two, trying to bring those guys together. I tell you what, I love the idea of Dyshawn Sims playing that guard spot, and especially he and Wynn together, because you want to talk about some great communication. They came in with Nick and Sony, and I think they're very similar in the way that those two are. They knew each other kind of coming up. They were Georgia's key pieces to the line that year. They are guys who have a good connection, and I think to have that on your left side of the line, very important.
I think if you keep those three in, maybe you push Ben Cleveland, Torrey Johnson, and DeMarcus Hayes into that right guard, right tackle spot, you're okay. Let's move on from that, though, guys. We've had enough of the talk of the offensive line. Jake, I know that you saw a ton at practice, the big practice that they were able to show you guys, and you guys were able to write a lot of that down. And let's just say what were three things that stuck out to you. Let's give you 30 seconds apiece on each one of those. And what were three things right now off the dome? I never asked you this question before, so you're going to have to come with it off the dome. Three things that stuck out to you.
All right, I'm going to give you the first one based on a question we got on Facebook. Somebody said, do you think Mecole Hardman will get a good bit of snaps on defense this year? I do. I think that and really, here's the thing. I think you're just going to see Mecole get a good amount of snaps, period.
Do you think Mecole starts on defense day one?
No.
Okay.
I don't. But I think he's going to be a very key role player. I think that he's going to be a guy that they rotate in there. He's also going to be returning kicks and punts for you. And they've got offensive packages, and we've seen that at practice already. So I do think everybody always wants to know about Mecole Hardman. I do think you're going to get a heavy dose of Mecole this year. My second thing would be the quarterback situation playing out exactly how Georgia fans had hoped and what I'd wanted to see from it too. Jake Fromm is bringing it. And Jake Fromm, I'll tell you, I saw him on Saturday. It wasn't his best day, but Tuesday and Thursday of last week, incredible, great accuracy, just hitting his spots consistently and showing you exactly why he was a five-star guy. Guys are buying into that.
I've been watching that QB1 series. Have you seen that with Jake Fromm on it?
No, I don't need to watch that. I haven't. I don't.
well, I'm just saying. From watching that, Jake Fromm is a very competitive dude.
Absolutely.
He broke a ping pong paddle after he lost to his little brother.
Yeah.
So his dad was not pleased with that. But what's your third?
The third one I would be is, I guess I would say, the guy that I think is probably going to be I'm going to give you two guys that I think are going to be impact makers this year. One being a new arrival. That's freshman D'Angelo Gibbs. I think D'Angelo does have a chance to start in the fall. Day one. I do think he's taking first-team reps right now. He's working that star position. They're rolling him into corner. It's not out of the question, I don't think, for him to drop back into safety. I think that he's Dyshawn Sims. He's Dyshawn Sims on the other side. He's your multi-tool on the defensive backfield. He can do it all. The second guy, I got to tell you, love this guy. One of my favorite guys that I've ever covered. Love covering him now at Georgia, and have loved what I've seen from him the first few days. DeAndre Walker is coming with a vengeance. He's put on some great weight. He's a lot bigger, a lot bulkier than he was, and he is a nightmare. I mean, he was running Ben Cleveland and DeMarcus Hayes out of their shoes the other day. I mean, just crashing that line.
They need a third guy on that outside.
Absolutely. And I think that this is the year that it happens. I think that DeAndre is the guy who I think we've seen flashes of it. I think this is the year he's ready to deliver.
Who's the fourth guy? For outside linebacker.
For outside,
Lorenzo, Davin, Bellamy. Would Manak be
Well,
that fourth
Manak's
guy?
actually playing a little bit more defensive end. I've seen him working a lot with the D-line group.
I think they need a fourth guy on that outside. Anybody that comes off the top of your head?
I don't know. I mean, I think you'll just see him roll a variety of guys out there overall. Let's see. Anybody that jumps out to me. Manak, I guess, has a chance to play back there. I think that you could also potentially see, at different spots, Roquan, even Natrez Patrick. Those guys both have the speed to crash that in.
Don't forget about Nate McBride. He could come in on that edge.
Sure, absolutely. And Monty Rice is there now. So.
Correct.
That's pretty good speed out there from the outside linebacker position for especially
Correct.
for these
Yeah.
young guys and stuff like that.
Yeah, Nate, get around that corner and just run.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what you got to do.
Tom Gross on Facebook mentions Robert Beal's still coming in. So hey, there's a good option for you off the bat.
I don't know if Robert will need a little bit of time, kind of like how Chauncey Manak had. But that's one thing, and he mentioned that Tom did about Andrew Thomas on the offensive line. We missed him too. Georgia has a ton of impact recruits coming in this class.
I mean, the future's good right now. It's going to be so much better in like another year, 2 years. I mean,
are you sure about that? You've got stats. We can get into next segment.
Well, I'm talking about just defense-wise.
Okay.
Defense-wise, I mean, if you just thinking top of your head how many great freshmen and sophomore they are right now.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of times, sometimes they don't pan out. But you know what? If 50% of them pan out, it's still a pretty good. It's a pretty good percentage of star.
And we forgot about Jaden Hunter and Malik Herring on the outside too.
Hey, don't forget Walter Grant.
And you haven't talked about LeCount. You had
who can run.
Defensive back.
Yeah, sure. Hey, exactly. I mean, you've got guys who can run.
Correct.
I mean, that is what this has become. This has become NCAA 2014.
Yes.
They're organizing them by 40 times and really just stacking those guys in there. I'm telling you, I love this idea too. We touched on Manak. I love the idea of him playing that jack position and kind of going up and down a little bit, playing with a hand on the dirt. He's certainly big enough to do that, and but he's also got the speed and the length to play to crash from the outside.
Who are two guys that you could see, because you've been out at practices a couple of times now, Jake, that you could see those two guys could maybe make a difference once they get onto campus, because I don't really see this position as being a great amount of depth there. There's two guys that maybe in the summer could come in and push some guys. It's really difficult, Dave. You know, you've been following this team for a long time. It's really difficult to come in the summer and play significant minutes day one. But are there a couple guys, are there a couple positions that you're worried about that could get some guys to come in?
I'm not going to say, for the first one, I'm not going to say I'm necessarily worried about it, but I do think that one of these defensive backs that's still to come, whether it be Trey Bishop, Brenny, maybe Amir Speed, one of those guys, I do think they can end up playing a vital role in year one. I think
because depth concerns?
Mm-hmm. Well, and it looks like they're going with a heavy rotation this year. I think that they're going to sub in a lot of guys, keep that pretty frequent. The other guy I think is I would really put money down to make a difference is Mark Webb.
Yeah.
He's not here yet, and I think that Mark is a guy who's got a really good chance to show out.
And at wide receiver, it's really easy to come in as a freshman. That's probably the easiest position, or
running
back.
Any of the skill positions, because I mean you're
go run that route tree. Here's your route tree.
4-4 speed is always good to have, and 4 or 4-5 speed.
Would you agree, wide receiver and running back, the two easiest positions to come in?
I would say definitely so, because it's more. You could get away with a little bit more. I mean, you might not get away with as much of your athletic ability, but you still could get away with a lot of it compared to an offensive or defensive lineman that you have to worry about technique. And
5 seconds, Dave. Hardest position to come in.
I would say offensive line, which scares me the most, because that's the position that we
that needs it the most.
Exactly.
Well, just like needing it the most, we need some commercial breaks to fill out our time. So we'll be right back. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGASports.com.
All right.
Let's touch on this stuff that he's got.
Okay.
I want to touch on this because that's very interesting.
We got some people asking on the line about Holloman. How has Holloman looked? Derek Raycroft says, I think Holloman might already be the best receiver that we have. Totally rocked up. I mean,
we are not allowed to have Holloman in this restaurant because we wouldn't be able to fit inside with his guns and some of that.
He's huge, and he's looking great. I think that he is. I think that he's strong. I think that he's going to be fine there. I think that really for Jeremiah, it's going to be about refining his skills, and really that's always what it's going to have. Always what it was going to be for him. There's no doubt that the kid's always had the athleticism to make a difference, and I mean, just freaky fast. Great jumping ability.
Yeah, he just needs to work on his hands a little bit.
Yeah, work on the hands, clean up your routes, make those crisp. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of questions about punter. I saw him punt. He can punt.
Now here, you left off one major thing in when you said, learn the routes or get the hands. Georgia, for wide receiver, you have to know how to block.
Yeah,
and that's
definitely.
And you can have all the skills, and sometimes you might not.
Well,
get
he's swole up from the flow up. So I mean,
Yeah.
He can definitely put hands on
was
somebody.
a great blocker in high school,
He was.
which is an underrated skill, like you said. I mean, you have to be able to do that. You don't see a lot of kids having to do that in high school because it just doesn't necessitate it.
Mm-hmm.
Normally you can out-athlete guys. Jeremiah, you could look at his film and see that he took great pride in his blocking. So I think that he's done very well there.
All right, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about Kirby Smart moving from year 1 to year 2. Dave's got tons of stats, so I'm just going to let him roll with it.
Okay.
3, 2. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Meharry, joined by my trusty co-hosts, Jake Roos and Dave McMahon of UGASports.com. We've talked a lot about spring practice so far, offensive line, some players that we think could contribute. We're going to be talking about the opening next segment. Jake Roos was able to attend that in part with 11 Alive to interview some of the top guys around the country and in the state and how they thought about the Georgia Bulldogs. But before we do that, a topic that I've wanted to touch on for a while, I'm glad Dave brought it up without even mentioning it to us because I've wanted to talk about it for a while. I've always forgotten about it, though. But year 1 to year 2 for Kirby Smart, I know we talked about this when the season was ending a little bit. We didn't have sufficient enough stats to back us up when we were talking about with that. Dave now has that. So
yeah,
the floor is yours.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, that basically since '64, Georgia's only had basically this is the 5th time we've had a major coaching change. Now, I'm not counting the whole Glenn Mason for a day factor.
I have no idea who that is. Do you?
Remember the Glenn Mason situation?
No.
Glenn Mason was our coach for maybe a day prior to Jim Donnan taking over. Okay, so we won't even mention him. But yeah, basically, he's the Kansas coach too. So obviously the major coaches, when people think of major transitions, you probably start off with Coach Dooley, Vince Dooley, back in '64 was his first year. And then after that, we had Ray Goff in '89, then Jim Donnan in '96, and then 2001 with Mark Richt. From year 1 to year 2, 3 of those 4 coaches showed major improvement. The only one that did not was Ray Goff, but Ray Goff did his in the 3rd and 4th year. But in the first year, Vince Dooley offense sputtered. They only averaged like 215, 216 yards of offense per game. Now, overall offense, which times were a little different, but 215, 216. And then the second year, you went to 247. So about 30 yards an average of per game, which is a good size number if you're averaging 30 more than you did before. Ray Goff went down. Ray Goff went from 315 to 282 from year 1 to year 2, and that was and that year 2 they got players like Garrison Hurst and Andre Hastings to show up. Now they needed a quarterback, and that's the quarterback in Eric Zier, which showed up in year 3. In '96, when Jim Donnan took over, they averaged 364 yards total offense. Year 2, they averaged 432. So that was a major difference of close to 70 yards per game of offensive difference. With Mark Richt, 432 to 449, so about 17, 18 yards. So not as much, but it's still a decent turnaround. But Vince Dooley, major turnaround in record-wise. Jim Donnan went from 5-6 in '96. That was the last time Georgia did not reach a bowl game. And then '97 they went 10-2. So big difference on that wise. Mark Richt went 8-4 his first year. Then the whole 13-1 situation in 2002, winning the SEC title. So a lot of big time offenses. So if we see people worried about they can't get things going on, year 2. A lot of improvement on those, and a lot of it is learning the system, learning a whole new playbook, these are people who have not used to these changes, and now they are. Georgia struggled both passing and rushing. Sometimes they actually had a good passing game, sometimes they had a good rushing game, but very rarely they had both. And both rushing and passing, but both were under 200 yards a game, which is very rare for Georgia. Times that Georgia's had under 200 in both rushing and passing was 2016 like this. They actually did that in 2015. They did in 07, 06, then way back in 1990, back in 89. So for a long time stretch, and then prior to that was 79. So basically 6 times in the last 40 years they've had both 200 yards or less in both passing and rushing averages.
Well, and you mentioned, too, this transition from year one to year two, and I think that it cannot be understated. It's something we've talked about so much in these post-practice interviews. Nick Chubb said it. Isaiah Wynn said it. All these guys, for the most part. This is the first time Nick Chubb has had the same offensive coordinator 2 years in a row since he got to Georgia. This is the same time. This is the same Isaiah Wynn, same position coach. First time for 2 years straight. There's been so much turnover in the career of these guys. Yeah, absolutely. So, even if it's a tough transition to make those switch ups, there's something to be said for continuity, and I think that this really speaks to that idea. They've got to feel comfortable with these guys, but they've also got to be able to, there's a certain process when a new boss comes in and the old boss goes out where you got to kind of clear the hard drive out and get this new terminology down and kind of get those expectations right. I think that that's going to be huge for Georgia. I love those stats because I think that speaks to exactly what Georgia needs to do. Now, will they do it is a little harder to say, of course.
Saying one thing is one thing and doing one thing is another.
They better. They definitely can't afford a drop-off, and I guarantee you if it looks anything like it did last year or somehow worse, people are not going to be very happy. You might have some riots on Broad Street. So.
I think the big thing with that, though, is it's so easy for fans to say, well, let's just get rid of the offensive coordinator. We'll start over fresh. Nick Chubb has not had a second season with an offensive coordinator. Give him one. That might have been what went into Kirby Smart's thought process. So, yeah, Jim Chaney was pretty terrible at times last year.
Sure.
There's no denying that. We're not sitting here trying to stick up for him. We saw the play on the field. But at the same token, give the man a second year and give Nick Chubb and Sony Michel a second year. They've already been in this guy's office. Let's not forget. They've already been in his office and said we need to run a little bit better.
Yeah.
We need to run the ball a little more. And you saw what happened after that. Jim Chaney kind of reevaluated things. I think that the good thing about having Jim Chaney back around is he's never had barn burner offenses where he's going to put up 60 points a game. That's just not how he runs his offense. But the thing is with Jim Chaney, he's been around the game so long that he can kind of create offense out of nothing. And right now he's got a killer sophomore quarterback coming back who played a ton his freshman year and didn't do half bad doing it. You got Sony Michel and Nick Chubb both coming back, major assets that you can ride on for the majority of the season, even if Jacob Eason is terrible. You still have those two guys. And then your wide receivers core, you only lost one guy, Isaiah McKenzie, and you can refill that with Mark Webb and Jeremiah Holloman and, potentially get Mecole over there. So I think the outlook for the offensive side of the ball, like Dave said, I think that the numbers progress. If they don't, I'm completely fine with revamping and going a different route. Like Nick said, give him a second year.
And it won't be, I'll go quick on this one, it won't be for lack of talent in terms of coaching because, as you mentioned, Jim Chaney been around the game a long time. You've got Jay Johnson they just recently added.
Correct.
He's got offensive coordinator experience. James Coley has offensive coordinator experience. Del McGee has been was a head coach.
Shane
for
Beamer
a time.
learned underneath his
Shane
dad.
Beamer turned, yeah, so you've got a lot of guys. If things aren't working, hey, hit that war room. You've got some guys who can draw up a play.
Correct. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to DawgDial presented by UGAsports.com.
All right. Couple quick hitters here. We'll grab these since we may not be able to necessarily fit them into the show. Travis Powell got a couple of questions. He said, Chigbu getting better at catching. I hate to tell you, Travis, but not from what I've seen so far. He looks like he picked up right where he left off last season. The thing about Chig, though, he'll block, and he's a good blocker, and so that's going to get him some playing time. He also wants to know, will we see Holyfield this year? I'm really interested to see where Elijah's going to fit into this offense this year. It'll be good to get him some breaks, but you got DeAndre Swift coming in. I'm looking for him to contribute. I think Harrigan's going to see plenty of time. It's going to be interesting to see how they do that. One more question here from Tom Gross. Tom says, is Warner back totally from the ankle injury? Yes, he is. He was a little hampered last year, kind of had the high ankle sprain. Nothing you can do for that but give it time to heal. Charlie's had this whole off season, and he looks, man, I'll tell you what, he almost crashed into me the other day at practice, and he is one big dude.
I want him to find the field somehow.
That's the thing. With the whole offensive coordinator thing that I was talking about, we didn't even talk about Nada, Blazevich, and Warner at tight end. This offense, if they can work out the offensive line problems, is going to be stacked.
Tweak, and conquer.
I mean, you keep looking at it, and the more we talk about it, I'm like, why can't this team win 11 games?
Easy, Tiger. It is still March.
All right, so let's talk recruiting.
Yeah. 3, 2, and welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Meharry, joined by my trusty co-host, Jake Roos, and Dave McMahon of UGAsports.com. And, guys, we've caught you up on all things UGA football in terms of what's happening in Athens. Well, let's talk to you a little bit about the opening.
Yeah. The guys you want in Athens.
Yes, the guys that you want to see in Athens. Tons of guys were able to take in the opening in Atlanta. I was able to write an article on DeAndre Hill, who is just a man among boys. Who were some of the guys that stood out to you, and who were some of the guys that should have stood out to you that didn't?
I'll say, first off, this guy's a guy who's got a Georgia offer. I don't expect him to get out of the state of Alabama. The guy who really caught my eye, I thought had the best performance all day, was Phoenix City wide receiver Justin Ross. He's a 5-star over on Rivals.com.
Yep.
Looked absolutely unstoppable out there running his routes, and, I mean, it really just wasn't even close.
Comparison 2017 class, 2016 class?
I mean, I don't know. Better, he looked better than Nico to me.
Okay.
You know, I mean, he was, and Nico was pretty highly regarded.
Yep.
So, kind of in that same conversation, huge guy, really big, really physical. Really enjoyed watching him. A guy I want you to keep your eyes on. You can say that you heard it here first. I'm giving you guys the inside scoop here on DawgDial.
Okay.
That would be Jim Barnett III of Habersham Central.
Oh.
Nobody had heard of this kid before Sunday. Before Sunday. He shows up, wins a wide receiver MVP. He's like 6'1", about $170, and just was flat out nasty. I mean, was just dancing on fools. Loved what I saw out of Jim Barnett. Crazy story. Go check him out. Look him up. I promise you. I got a great tweet up over at Roost Recruiting where you can go see a great play that he made. A couple guys I was interested in their responses that I talked to. J.J. Peterson is probably the guy I want to lead off with. The reason that his was so interesting is because just a guy who doesn't talk. I mean, a guy who is very private, very quiet, doesn't do a lot of interviews, not a lot of media, that kind of thing. Had a chance to talk with him. A lot of people assumed that, Keel Pollard went up from Colquitt County to South Carolina last year. Those guys are very close, tight friends. Now, a lot of people assumed that was going to kind of lead them back together. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case. For JJ, he says it's in between Alabama and Georgia right now. He gave me one of the best quotes of the entire weekend. I asked him about that trip to Alabama, and he said, when I got there, it was just okay. And I had never heard a kid say that about Alabama. And he followed up, though, and he said, but when I got in that office, I was blown away.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, once they lay the rings out and you get to sit down with Nick Saban, yeah, you may feel a little bit different. So Georgia really pressing hard there. They love him as an inside-outside guy. I mean, a little bit of both. Super fast, made the opening finals in Oregon, so he'll be headed out there this summer. It was tremendous to watch him. Another guy that I really liked was Michael Harris out of Tucker.
He seems to be rising pretty heavily.
Man, you want to talk about a guy whose stock has flown off the charts since Rising Seniors. And really it's about his build. He's getting in such great shape. You're talking about a guy who's in that 6'2.5" range. Just looks like a perfect inside linebacker. And the thing about him is it's very strange, I think, for a lot of people because he loves Ohio State, and he said I grew up watching him, and which is totally reasonable. I mean, Ohio State's been on TV a lot the last 10 years, which is when these guys have all been watching football. They've had some championships. I mean, those things matter. So, he said, that's my dream offer. That's the school I want to commit to. He said he's waiting on to get test scores. However, he noted, and I thought it was very smart on his part, very perceptive on his part, and very smart of Georgia to sell this, that Kirby Smart played a key role in the development of Reuben Foster.
Yeah.
And he said, Kirby thinks I can be that same kind of player. That's very appealing to Michael, as you might expect. It's hard to turn that down. Couple other guys that I thought were really impressive. Jalen Cunningham's a kid who visited Georgia recently, huge guy. Georgia, Alabama, kind of 1 and 2 there. Alabama in the lead. He's from the Birmingham area, so going to be a tough pull. Yeah, tough pull there. Kyler McMichael's a guy that I'm really interested in.
I really like
after
him.
Seeing him.
Kyler
Kyler is a guy with a ton of athleticism. Yeah, running back, defensive back, wide receiver, anything you need. I mean, he's really built like a linebacker almost. But Georgia really likes his upside and his ability at the corner spot. So he looks like he's going to be one of the prime time guys that they're going to be focusing on, and I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great if they can get him. I think that he's a guy with a lot of versatility that makes a lot of sense.
I think a couple of guys that everybody wants to know about used to not be this way. The Stockbridge to Athens connection.
Yeah.
They're trying to get Brenton Cox and Marquez Ezzard. If you remember last year, they had Jalen Holston, running back that's going up to Virginia Tech. Oh, yeah.
Loved his film, loved his game.
I think that Georgia's sitting pretty with both of those guys out of Stockbridge. I think it's one of those things where if you take one, you're going to get the other.
Yeah.
But it's going to be pretty hard to get the first.
And it is. And I think that you've got a better chance if Georgia is going to play this. I think that you got a better chance of getting Brenton to come on first, and then Ezzard afterward. And Brenton even told us as much, at the opening. He basically said, Marquez is not a huge fan of Georgia's offense right now, which understandable. I mean, they had struggles in the passing game. There wasn't a clear-cut guy. There wasn't a superstar out there. Hey, I get it. If you want to be a star receiver, that makes sense to me. So, however, Brenton, huge on Georgia, loves him, comes and visits all the time, and seems like a guy who could really, really end up being a part of this class. Said Georgia wants him to be the Richard LeCount of this class, wants him to be the leader.
They don't have one right now.
They don't. And I taught them, I said Adam Anderson, Donovan Georges. These are quieter guys. These are guys that maybe aren't as comfortable. You're a guy who's kind of outspoken, large personality to match the large frame for sure. And I think that there's a certain appeal to that. I think that there is I think that's compelling for kids to hear. Hey, we want you to be the leader. Especially, my God, the love Richard LeCount got. I mean, the kid. Oh, man. The kid's a Georgia legend, and he hasn't even taken a snap in Sanford Stadium. So, overall, I think that I think that that's got to be a big appeal. I think it's a great selling point for them.
You could legitimately sell to if you want to face the 2018 class, which I'm sure Kirby Smart wants to kind of get these kids going. Look, do you know how many questions we get about Mecole Hardman? He was the stud for 2016. Do you know how many questions we're going to get if Richard LeCount does not see the field early and often in 2017?
Absolutely.
Fans love both those guys. Do you want to be the next one? Because I promise you, if you were to be that next guy, you will have the same questions about you. It's just how it's going to work. And whenever Georgia does get that guy on, I can promise you one thing. He probably won't be flipping because he will be a legend. Like Jake said, LeCount and Hardman both are already. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to DawgDial presented by UJSports.com. We'll do about 3.5 here.
All right, cool. Yeah, we'll do a little quick hitters.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, those who are near the Athens area, come over here to the Champies because at 6:30 I am hosting a sports trivia show.
Yes.
And first prize today,
$200
cash. $200 cash.
All right, last segment.
Here we go.
That's our last segment bell there.
Yeah, scared everybody in the restaurant. 3, 2, and welcome back to DawgDial presented by UGA Sports. I'm your host, Paul Meharry, joined by my co-host, Jake Roos, and Dave McMahon of UGASports.com. And, guys, we're sitting here at Champy's Fried Chicken on Baxter Street, hosted by Josh and Amy Collins, eating some delicious fried chicken right when we get off this show, drinking down some delicious beverages, which we're already doing on this show. I'm just kidding. I'm not. But we also have trivia every Tuesday after DawgDial. Our man Dave McStats here blows it up, and they're having the biggest prize maybe ever in Athens.
A big prize for a normal week type thing.
Yeah.
I mean, normally I've been part of other trivia ones that are bigger, but this is going to be something they're going to try to do. The prizes for every week is still bigger than any one for a normal weekday one. And then all of a sudden, Josh and Amy Collins jumped up the prices, and now first prize in the last Tuesday every month is a yes.
No, go ahead, say it.
Is a $200 cash prize.
Now that's what's the kicker, cash.
Yeah.
Almost nobody. This ain't store credit. This is hard money in your hand.
Correct.
As Randy Moss would say, straight cash homie.
Yeah, absolutely. So
how hard are these questions going to be?
I'm going to make it a little bit more difficult than the normal one, but if you follow sports, I mean, it's going to be half normal general sports and half UGA sports. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But if you follow sports, I say go for it.
Before we forget about it, too, not only Tuesday night, great things happening at Champy's. Friday nights, they got crawfish going on 5 p.m. until they run out, and they do run out, folks.
They do.
You got to get in here.
I will be here this Friday.
Have yourself a cold beer, get you some mud bugs, and sit back and listen to your favorite podcast, DawgDial.
Yeah, for sure. And, guys, give me a couple quick hitters. What are you looking for this week?
Oh.
Recruiting-wise, team-wise, you going on a hot date? What you got?
No, I'm looking to see how Richard LeCount kind of starts faring in these practices. We talked a lot about D'Angelo Gibbs and how he's kind of rolling in.
Sure.
Tom Gross over on Facebook. Thanks for tuning in, Tom.
Man, Tom's been MVP today.
He has been. He said, "How is LeCount looking?" Kind of a mixed bag so far for LeCount, but hey, that's what you expect for the freshman. I will tell you, he's still out there talking smack. That's just part of what he does. He's never too
Do you think
shy
that'll
to do
stop
that.
when he gets hit by a 6'5" tight end in the
Nope.
SEC?
Nope. He's going to hop back up and he's going to say, "Hey, good hit, buddy.
Yeah.
Let's do it again."
Let's do it one more.
And then because that's Richard's style. I mean, that's just the kind of guy he is. LeCount, I want to see his progression. I saw him get beat on a couple routes the other day. Hey, it's going to happen. You got some experienced guys out there. This ain't high school ball anymore. But I do think Richard's got a great chance to be a big-time playmaker before all is said and done.
What do you got this week, Dave?
What I want to see is continuation in the progress of Easton and Fromm and the connections with the wide receivers being on the same page, being like the wide receivers are running, turning around, and the ball is right there, or just catching in stride, just more fluidity on that instead of having to lunge one way to have to catch the ball. I want them to be on the same page because it happened very rare last year, and I want to see it happen more this year.
It did indeed, and I think that's something that they're going to be working on. They've continued to work on. I want to see how this offensive line kind of gels, these pieces that they're throwing in there. Obviously, they've got a lot more pieces to throw in during the summertime when those guys get here. But I want to see if, somebody can step up and, maybe claim a second spot or claim that right guard spot. Because it seems like that right guard spot right now is the most open out of any positions on the line. So be interested to see if anybody can get on there. Guys, we're going to wrap it up, though. You got anything else?
Cheers.
Cheers. You good?
Yeah, go Dogs.